Okay, hello everyone. So as Gary mentioned, today we will be talking about metadata and forms and how you can use them to drive and improve your business process and automation. Um, we have a few slides to begin with so that everybody will be on the same page at the same level and understand what metadata is, what forms are, and how you can use them in Approve. And then once those few slides are done, we'll jump right into a series of live examples on one of our systems. Um, Gary did mention that you guys will be getting a copy of the presentation sent via email after the webinar. The copy you will get will actually contains a few more slides than the ones I will be showing today. Those extra slides will have short videos that highlight the various examples we'll be demonstrating today. So let's start right off with defining what metadata is. So in the very broadest sense of the word, metadata is essentially data about data or data about something. When we talk about metadata in the context of Approve, we're talking about information about a project. This information can be the project's name, the various deadlines associated with tasks within that project, the project ID. So those are all examples of metadata that has always been part of Approve, and we've always used it. You might not have referred to it as metadata, but it is essentially metadata. The content of the project, the proofs, the documents in the project, that is the data. The project name and everything that's sort of the properties of the project form what's called the project's metadata. Now in Approve, you can add your own metadata. You can add your own fields to cater to your needs and we'll see what you can do with those later on. So a good analogy to help explain what metadata is and the difference between metadata and data is if you think about your suitcase when you take a flight, if you guys can remember what it's like to take a flight, it's been so long for me. So the content of the suitcase is the data. Whatever you put in there, all your clothes, that's your data. And that's what you're trying to move from point A to point B, to fly from one city to another. The tag on the suitcase actually contains a lot of metadata. For example, it contains, well, who the suitcase belongs to. In this example on the screen, it belongs to Gary. It shows you where you're trying to go, where the suitcase is supposed to go. If Gary went over the size limit or the weight limit, even the color of the suitcase is considered metadata. So what can we do with metadata? Well, there's a lot of things we can do. I'm going to talk specifically in Approve. You could simply capture and store it in case you need it at a later time. And that's essentially, at the very least, what you do with any form of metadata in Approve. But then you can use it for all sorts of reports. Even out of the box, Approve comes with certain reports that are on the screen. The project list is a very good example of using metadata. We're essentially showing you a list of projects with some metadata fields like the project name, the deadline, the stakeholders, the step it's in, how many proofs it has. All of that is metadata on that project. Metadata can also help you find projects. So for example, if you capture the name of a customer in project metadata, you can later quickly find all of the projects related to that customer without having to open each project and figure out if this is part of the list of projects you're looking for or not. So that's another good example. And then you can use metadata to drive automation and flexibility in your workflows. For example, you could store a value in a metadata field and it would hold the name or the email of the person who's supposed to perform a certain task without having to set that permanently in your configuration. So that way, every project that you launch could all use the same configuration. So you only have one set of project configuration. But then along the way, you could decide, well, for this particular project, Gary will be performing task 2, whereas in another project, I would ask Xavier to do it. And so metadata comes into play there to help you add flexibility to your workflow. And then metadata can actually become data as well if it's used to create content. That might not be too intuitive, but we'll actually show you an example near the end of the webinar where we create content using metadata in a form. And then last but not least, metadata is also very, very powerful in Approve when used to interact with other systems, like, for example, an ERP, a DAM, or a PIM. You could store values coming in from the ERP that lets the ERP know where the project status is. We have an example of a customer has their external system kick off projects in Approve and also send a whole bunch of information related to that project, like who the requester of the item is. And so that gets stored in Approve as metadata and then gets later used in Approve to send that requester a notification saying, hey, your project's at this stage or at that stage, or this is where we're at with it. So all of that is essentially metadata being used automatically to interact with external systems. So I hope this helps clarify what metadata is and how you can use it. But then the question remains, how do we get metadata into Approve? Well, we've talked about a few different ways already. But let's go over the main ones. There's other ways of getting metadata in Approve, but these are the main 4 ways of capturing metadata. So obviously we can capture metadata coming from an external system. This is usually done via the Approve API, which is an automated way that systems interact with each other using well-defined commands. The example I gave earlier where an ERP automatically creates projects in Approve, and then it can send Approve the list of stakeholders for that project. So that's a good example of how we store information via the API. Approve can also generate its own metadata based on things that are happening in the system. For example, you could count and capture how many times a project has gone through a certain phase of a workflow, and then make decisions based on that information. And then you could show that in a dashboard and say, for example, this project has gone through 3 review cycles, but that one's gone through 8. And so like that dashboard would highlight, that information visible in a dashboard would highlight a problem there. So you could use that. You can also capture metadata from users when they're performing tasks. And the best example of that is, well, it's actually 2 great examples that you guys should be familiar with. Annotations, when you add a note to Approve, you're actually capturing metadata and in the form of an annotation and storing that in Approve. And then you can do things with that metadata, either print it out or interact with other users on it, but also automate your workflow using that information. Another good example of capturing metadata from user interaction is the decision buttons at the end of a task. When a user clicks on a button, they're making a decision, but that gets stored in Approve as metadata as well. And then you can use that in all of the ways that we've talked about earlier in the previous slide. And then lastly, and which is the focus of today's webinar, you can also present users with a form and ask them to fill it out. That form can contain optional and mandatory fields. And this will be the main way of gathering metadata during today's examples. But like Gary mentioned earlier, keep in mind that this is just an example to sort of give you an idea of what can be done, but any of that metadata could be captured from these other methods, like coming in from an ERP system, or being generated automatically based on actions, or just on user triggered actions. So, so hope that clears up a little bit when we talk about metadata, so that everybody's on the same page and we know what we're talking about. Okay, let's talk about forms. So forms are very powerful. They are a way of capturing information or capturing metadata. They allow you to present to the user a structured list of information you want to capture. Um, like mentioned earlier, some fields can be mandatory, others can be optional. You can set up as many forms as you wish. They don't require any special coding. It's essentially just a setup in the admin. But then they allow you to capture the information you need for a specific type of project at the moment you need it from the person who needs to fill it out, who has that information. Now, once the metadata is entered into the form, you can do all sorts of things with it that we've already talked about in the last few slides, and we'll show you some examples of that today. So in short, uh, the forms will help you set up a standardized way to capture metadata, to capture information that will help you drive efficiencies in your business processes. Okay, so let's jump into the examples. Like I mentioned earlier, all of the examples we're going to show you today, they were all inspired by actual real world use cases from you guys, from our customers. Uh, you might recognize some of the implementations or something similar and say, oh yeah, we're doing this, but hopefully the other parts will be more helpful for you, or strike up some ideas. So we'll show you some simple data capture examples and how that gets used in the project list, all the way to complex task creation made easy using input from a form using a grid, uh, the grid component. All right, so I will be showing these four examples today. So let's start off with the first one, um, which is probably the simplest one. In this example, we'll show you the project lists, and we'll show you how the value of a metadata field can be used to quickly find projects and identify projects in your list. So we have customers that have thousands and thousands of projects in their system, and then those projects come from different customers or pertain to different brands. In this example, it's going to be about a brand, and where we can quickly filter on these brands. Now, this information could be input into the project when you create the project and have a drop down where somebody selects the brand, or the ERP could create the project via an API call and then send that information and place it into the project, so that when you see it in your list, you're able to quickly identify it. All right, so let me jump into my demo. So as you can see, I'm in my project list now, and I've got a few projects, but there's no easy way to identify which project pertains to which brand. Fortunately, the ERP that created all these projects also sent the brand information along with the name of the project. And because I've got access to that metadata field, I'm able to add it to my columns here, and I can just add the brands column, and you'll see this column appear here, and it quickly shows me which brand these products are related to, or if there's a project that doesn't have a brand value, I can quickly see this. So that's showing you essentially a metadata field. It's a very simple example, but we can go further with that. As I mentioned earlier, one of the things you can do with metadata is help you find projects in Approve and find information in Approve. So I've created a quick filter here, an advanced filter that quickly filters out all the projects and only leaves me with the Acme. Can you guys hear me?
Can now.
Oh, okay. When did you lose audio?
Just as you was showing the Acme filter.
Oh, okay. That's weird. Okay, so as I was saying, I created this filter to quickly filter out based on that metadata value. So I could have created a filter for any value, but because I'm only interested in Acme and in my line of work, I create a filter that just filters out everything else. If I want to see all the other projects, I still have access to them, and so I can go into them, but this just makes my life easier. All right, let's go back to our keynote and talk about our second example. So this example is a bit more complex, but it's still very simple to the end user. So we're hiding the complexity of this automation using metadata and forms. It's a two-part example. The first task will show you a form that allows a marketing director to pick which user will perform the second task, and then we'll also be able to set the deadline in that task, and then send that task off to the second person. And then the second task is the second form that we'll see in that task is actually quite powerful, and it allows the user to select which tasks will get created based on checkboxes that are selected in that form. So we'll see a form with the list of products, and we'll have different columns for the checkboxes that we can click, and then we will sort of pivot that spreadsheet like grid and create tasks that will contain the different products for each. It'll be a little bit clearer when I show it, but it's actually quite neat example. And then this example comes from one of our customers that was using spreadsheets and then sending spreadsheets to their end users, and then pretty much everyone had their own flavor of the spreadsheet. They were being sent by email. You never really knew if you had the latest one, so it was very error prone. And then this streamlined that whole process and made it a lot easier to make sure you get all of the right information in the right format, and then you got everything that you needed sent to the photographer. Gary, you want to set the stage for this one?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I think in this use case, what we wanted to do here was show two different types of form being used in the same workflow. Now, obviously, we're not going to go the entire way through the workflow. We just want to show the form interaction. So to set the scene, let's imagine that Sylvain is a product owner, and he's working for a luxurious goods company. That luxurious goods company has several brands that it takes ownership of. So let's imagine that that company is launching a new product range, and the product range information is all stored inside that company's ERP system, which is completely aside from Approve. It's nothing to do with Approve. So when this product owner needs to kick off a new marketing campaign, what he will do is he will go inside the ERP system, select the products that they require for the marketing campaign. Then what will happen is the ERP will use the Approve API to deliver all of that product information into Approve, and we will store that as metadata. And it means that we can reference that metadata anywhere in the workflow throughout the journey of that project. Now, what we will do is, what the API will do is it will automatically kick off a new project inside Approve. And that project in our scenario here is going to have two steps. The first step, we're going to send a task to the marketing director. And it's up to the marketing director to do four very simple things. They have to select a deadline for this project to be completed. They have to select the resource in the marketing team that needs to work on the project. They also need to supply a brief that can be uploaded with this project so that it can be stored within the project as well. Once that's done, the person that the marketing director selected as the person that needs to work on the project will then receive a task. And their task, as Sylvain sort of alluded to there, and we'll show it in a moment, their task is to select what third-party studio needs to start this campaign in terms of doing the automated photography that needs to happen to kickstart that campaign. And as Sylvain said, this is a really powerful way that this customer eliminated a lot of duplication, a lot of human error, and a lot of spreadsheets that were going via email backwards and forwards to different suppliers. So it centralized everything and gave everyone a very easy way to be able to brief the studios externally. So over to you, Sylvain.
Thank you. So I am the marketing director, and I've got my task here that was sent by the ERP system when it kicked off the project, and then the new campaign launch. So I get to pick the brand. This would normally be sent by the ERP, but I'll just pick one of our customers here. And then I know that my lead guy called Marketing Lead 1 is available for this project, so I'll assign that to him. And then I want the deadline for the photo shoot to be, let's say, next Friday at 5 p.m. I'll set that at 5 p.m. And then I've got an optional field here, which is the brand guidelines. This will upload the file that I put in there, but it doesn't become a proof. It essentially becomes a supporting document that's available in the project, but is not seen as a proof per se. And so I will that file will get uploaded, and I've completed my task, and I've put in all the information that's required. And now the system will automatically generate a task for my lead, the lead that I've selected. In this case, all the emails go to me, so that's why I'm getting it. But I've got a photo shoot request, and you can already see metadata at use here, where I've got the name of the customer being shown in this invitation. And I'll start my task. And then this task also uses metadata. So we've set the customer's logo here and then the customer's name as well. But let's go into the interesting part, starting the task and showing the grid, the form here. So this form's a little bit more complex, but when you break it down, it's actually quite simple. I get to pick out which studio is going to make this photo shoot. So let's do agent. I know that agency 1's available based on the deadline that was selected in the previous step. This deadline here is a metadata field, but I can't change it. It's grayed out because it's just there for reference to help me select which agency is going to be doing it. And then the ERP already populated which products will be part of this campaign, and so they need to be shot. And then we've got the SKUs for all of these products, and then the default values for some of the views that are needed for each of the products. So all of this came in automatically from the external system. Now, as a marketing lead, my job is just to take a look at this and maybe add a few more things that I think are needed. For example, I know these sneakers have a really cool logo on the side, so I want to make sure we get a side view. And then maybe the watch needs a top view, and a zoom view is always nice on a watch. And then I know my guitar is going to become a billboard, so I'll make a pack shot of it. And then I can set the resolution for all of these. So let's say these ones are for the web. This one's for a printed magazine. This one's going to go on a billboard, and this is web as well. So I've got all my information here filled out. the way I want it. So what's going to happen now when I hit done is that the system will actually take this table here, this spreadsheet-like table, and sort of pivot it and create a task for each of the views that we need. And in each of those tasks, it will list the different products as well as the resolution and the SKUs that are needed for this shot, because that's the way those photo shoot studios work, is that in this particular case, they would set up for, let's say, the side view, and they're set up all their equipment for the side view, and then just have a list of products that require a side view. So they will get one task for side view, one task for zoom, one task for top view, aerial view, and pack shot, and then just set up for one task, run through it, and with the list of all the products. And I'll show you an example once I hit the done button here. The system will automatically create those tasks and send them to the studio, which I happen to also get the emails from. So here's an example of one of the tasks for the side view, which has the sneakers that I wanted, and then the other two items that were already pre-selected, along with the SKUs and the resolution. So all that is part of the task definition. And it also shows up, if I start the task, it will actually also show up here. And so now I'm tasked with taking these three items, taking side view pictures of them at the requested resolutions, and then uploading them into Approve. Um, one of the things for the same customer, one of the things that we also implemented was a naming convention to be enforced on the files that were sent back, because they were dealing with a lot of different studios, and then required a specific naming convention for different reasons. One, they wanted to make sure for compatibility in terms of quality of the files, the format of the files that they needed to work with, but also the naming conventions in terms of being able to quickly identify which product uh, they wanted to see. So like the code of the product had to be part of the file name, as well as the type of view that was used to make the shoot. So if I try, for example, so we've enforced this in this example, something similar. If I try to upload a file that doesn't respect that naming convention, you will actually see Approve will reject it and tell you why it's being rejected. It'll actually show you in here the name of the file that I've put in, as well as it highlights in red the parts that are not compliant with the file naming convention. And then I've got a description at the bottom of what the different parts are supposed to be. And so it does highlight that it's supposed to be a TIFF, and it found that no, it's a JPEG, that doesn't work. And then the second part here is supposed to be a 13 number SKU for the product, and I've only got 6, so that file gets rejected. Now, if I take another file that has a right naming convention, it'll actually accept it and let me upload it. So that's a very powerful way of using forms for this customer, and it ended up saving them a lot of time, and especially a lot of human errors, where users didn't have to look for the latest spreadsheet and chase people by email. All of that gets added to tasks, and obviously, just like everything else in Approve, all of the interactions with the systems are logged in the project history, so it's really easy to just follow a project and see where things are at. So again, using metadata, then you can build reports on where things are at for that particular project and follow things along. All right, let's go back to, I think I can close these off, and let's go back to our keynote. And let's take a look at our third example. So in this example, we're going to show you how you can query an external system from within a form, and have sort of interactions with that third-party system while you're in the form, while you're performing your task, and then store the result of that query in the project's metadata, and then use those values later on in your workflow. So we'll present the user with the form, and we'll be searching for products that we want to add on a blank page. And then we'll set the location for those products. And then the product information is located in a PIM. The image are located in a DAM. And we're using integrations with those systems. And because of that integration, the user can seamlessly search and select the products they want to place on the page and where to place them. For the customer, we implemented this. Um, the merchandisers were actually pinning pictures of the product on a wall, taking a picture of the wall and sending that to the studio. So obviously this saved them a lot of time and headache, especially in terms of finding the right images and not having to print them out. And it also reduces human error a lot. Um, and we went a bit further than that. And for this particular example, for this customer, we also have the ERP system, their planning system, send the list of products that are available for each page. So if you were on, for example, if a product was flagged as being usable on the front cover of the flyer, then that would show up in the list of results. Otherwise, it would not. So Gary, do you want to give a bit more, set the stage for this example?
Yeah, I think you've done a good job there anyway, Sylvain, but I'll sort of try and explain it in a bit more layman's terms, I guess. So basically in this example, what Sylvain's going to show here is, and again, just adapt this to your own environment because it is still very relevant that you can look into third-party systems from this form. But the idea here is that in this use case, and it was something we built for a really large supermarket chain in Europe. And the challenge they had, as Sylvain sort of said, was that they had merchandisers who had all of the stock and sales and analysis reports of what stock and what sales levels they were at. So when they were creating a weekly flyer, what they were doing, they were going to a great big wall in the office, and that wall had the different flyers just as a template on the wall. They were cutting out the picture of the product using a Pritt stick to then stick it where they think it should be on the page. And as Sylvain said, then taking a photo of that and sending it to the studio guys for them to build that mock-up. So obviously that was a very long process. It took a lot of time to do that. So what we were able to do with this customer is allow the merchandiser to be able to open up a page layout template like a grid, and then they'll be able to create notes in the exact locations where they want the products to be placed on that particular page. Now, inside the note tool, which Sylvain will display you in a moment, the note is able to actually display a form. And in that form, the user can actually then view products that are stored in both a PIM or a DAM or both, and they can navigate, search, find, and then select the products they want to be placed in the positions they want them placed on the page. Once they've done that, it then sent that to the next step of the workflow, which was to automatically send that to the studio team, who then built that first draft of the product. And furthermore, which is even more useful in some ways, once they've built that first draft, and they might be 2 or 3 revisions into that process, if a merchandiser has some late information about a product that they need to shift, they are able to go into approve via the annotation tool, select the product that needs to change, and then again view the DAM or the PIM and select an alternative product, which will then send the note back to the studio. So I think that kind of sets the scene, Sylvain, so you can probably
Yeah.
it will be easier to show.
The only thing else left is to just show it in action. So here I've got my blank mock-up of a page where I need to fill out the different products that I want to position on that page. So I will just create an annotation, which use a square annotation there. That'll make more sense. There we go. And recently, well, actually a few few releases back, several months ago, we added tags to annotations. And so you can define which tags are available in a note. In this particular case, I'm adding the tag automatically. As soon as I add an annotation, my user is forced to add this tag. And the reason I'm doing this is because this tag contains a form, and the tag itself is metadata, but the form that it contains even more metadata fields, and so these fields are interactive. So I can actually start searching. Let's say I want to put some tomatoes in here. So I can start typing, and as I'm typing, it filters out on the items that were pre-selected by the ERP or by the external system, and I can just select my tomatoes. And by selecting it, it actually reaches out to the PIM and grabs the information on the name of the product, the SKU, which I can't change, and then the brand. Now, being a merchandiser, I can decide we're allowing me to change the price, and I think these tomatoes are really, really pretty, so we should charge a lot more for them. So I'll just put them at $2.39 and then hit save. And then here's my one product done. So I can go ahead and do a second one here, and then hit this. And let's say, for example, I want some Avian water in here. I know that's available, so I'll pick that one, and that price is okay. Quite expensive for water. And there we go, and so on and so on. So this allows, like Gary mentioned, a lot faster process. It also encapsulates the list of, or limits the list of products that are available based on the page. The customer that actually implemented this will have, let's say, 50 pages, and each page has a different subset of products that are available to put on that page. And so it helps the merchandiser so much. It saves them so much time because the product information is all there. They don't have to go snooping around or looking for different products to put. They already know what's available. Furthermore, the information is all there about the pricing, the description. They're allowed to change it or not. And then once we have this final task performed, then the studio can actually take this and create the first draft of it using the images that were supplied, that were linked in these forms that we can reopen here. And so we can reopen the form, move things around, and actually go from one form to another and see, okay, I need to put this one there, I need to put that one there. And once you've generated this first draft, that gets fed back into Approve and then becomes a new version of this page, in this case, page one. And you can actually use the compare mode and actually see the difference, or if the right image was used. And like Gary mentioned, if you want to change it, if you want to change the image but not the product, then they can get a second type of tag, which is a change product tag, I think it's called, that has a different form. This is similar to this one, but then it searches based on the SKU and it forces them to just use images that are related to that SKU. And so, for example, for my Avian water bottles, I might have 10 different images for the same product, but then the new search form would be limited to that product only. Uh, and so we can make adjustments like that. So that's a very, very powerful example of how one of our customers is used metadata and forms to reduce the risk of human error, but also save a lot of time in their process. All right, so this one I think most of you will find quite interesting. All right, back to our examples, our videos. This one's not going to be shown. There we go. So this is our last example, our last live example for today. In here, we're going to show you how you can use metadata um, in a form, from a form, and then create content in a project with it. Essentially turning metadata into data and feeding a project. This example is based on one of our customers, and that customer's not doing it with images. They're actually replacing a Word document that used to get passed around from user to user, get filled out, and it was done by email. And having those different versions of that document float around in their email, in their mailboxes, was prone to error, meant that you could not really know exactly where the project was. So now everything is kept in Approve. The sequence of filling out the different form fields is all governed by Approve. And then at the end, what you end up with is you end up with a document that has the exact same layout within Approve, uh, but then everything is more, how do I want to say it? It's more uh, encapsulated within Approve. It's governed by the process, by the Approve process and the Approve workflow. And then you also get the accountability and the history tracking that Approve brings to projects. So I will show you here a form where you can select a product. It's going to be similar to the form that we saw in the previous example, but in this case, once you're done with the task, the output of the form will be used to create a PDF that will get fed back into Approve as the proof. And then it's actually going to create two different proofs. One where the product is a one pager, like a big poster, with the information that I've supplied. And then the other one is a 4x4 of the same sort of layout and the same product. So it's actually two different examples of the same product. Gary, anything to add on this one?
No, again, I mean, this is fairly similar to what we just showed you, but I think the difference here is that we have an automated content output as the end point. I guess a use case for this could be maybe I'm a regional grocery store and I've got way too many baked beans left on my shelf and I need to do a special offer on them, for example. So in this scenario, Sylvain could select that product and he could then generate some content, point of sale material, if you like, that can be put up around the store with the special offer. Another really simple business use case for this really could be for something as simple as business cards, for example. But it can be adapted anywhere. You might be a car dealership, you might be a local government office, a local council that's feeding off data that's coming in from the central government, for example. So lots of different use cases for it. I think this is a really good proof of concept showing the power of forms and metadata combined together to deliver an output. So yeah, I think that's probably good to go.
Great. So let's start this task off here. And so the task shows me a form that's very similar to the form we saw previously. I'm able to select which brand logo I want to appear on the poster. So let's pick Globex Corp here. And then again, I get to select to search for my list of products. And then I don't know if we have any beans. Sorry, Gary, we don't have any baked beans in here. Let's just pick this item here, the first item here. So I get to see the different, the description. In this case, I can actually change it. So let's just say I just want that part here. I can set the price. So let's do, we're on special. So let's do 209. I'm printing off a sort of a promotional poster. So I can set a date. And let's say I want it valid until the end of the month. And I can add some details. So for example, in here, I will limit it to 3 items per customer, because I know this is going to be very popular. And then I hit the done. Now, what Approve will do is it will use this metadata that I've entered into the form and actually create the PDFs and then feed them back into the project. So we've added the visual component to this example, and this could technically be called whip to print, although that's not really our intent. What we really want to highlight here is how metadata can be used to automate content creation and be part of the content creation. So right now we're building the content in Approve. It could also feed that information to an external system as well. And then you see right now it's processing the different PDFs that were generated and then treating them as normal proofs, exactly as normal proofs. And now we're ready, so we can go into it. And then we can see our two proofs. If I click on one, and you can see that, yeah, you can see I'm not really, this is why I'm not a marketing designer. You get the idea. So if it used the logo, the information that I've inputted, the price that I put, and then selected the image and then generated that content. This is a crude example, but we could easily use this for business cards or print this out exactly as it is, or maybe use the smaller version here and then put that on the shelves. And then you get a quick, very easy way of generating content. While still remaining within certain guidelines. For example, you could lock the price. The form could force a certain description of the items, or force a certain logo, or only use approved images in your printout. And so it sort of allows the user some freedom, but then locks them into corporate guidelines, if you will. All right, so let's go back to our here. So that was the last of the examples we wanted to show you. There are many, many more use cases we could have picked from our customers or from our ideas that we've had, but we wanted to highlight those and wanted to make sure we had enough time to show them deeply enough so that you get a good understanding. But other use cases could be, for example, selecting customers from a drop down. We've showed that in one of our examples, setting deadlines for each step. We actually have a customer that has no deadlines set in their workflow, and the external system that creates the project also sends as metadata the deadlines for every single step of the workflow. And then every project in their system has a different deadline for every step, and all of that gets automated via the external system and the exchange of metadata. You could send email alerts if a certain step gets looped in, let's say 3 times, then you escalate something to somebody else, to the manager. You could feed data to reports. There's a lot of examples there where metadata is used in custom reports, and many more. So those are just some of the examples. I'm hoping will have give you a good idea of the power of metadata and forms when used in Approve. So the idea is to give you examples and give you ideas of how you can use metadata and forms to increase the efficiencies of your processes, save you time and money, make your workflows more dynamic, and sort of use variables inside of your workflows and your business process to simplify the administration, but also increase the power and the flexibility of those business processes. So like it says here, the metadata enriches the already very functional, enriches the functions in Approve in a way that allows you to reuse things dynamically. How are we doing for time, Gary?
We're actually 4 minutes away from the top of the hour. So Darlene has sent us a couple of questions. I don't think we're going to have time to answer them. So Darlene, what we would do is we will send you a direct email answering your questions. Hopefully that will be okay. I guess we just need to wrap up, because obviously I'm conscious that everyone probably has other meetings in a couple of minutes. So first of all, thank you everyone for attending. Really appreciate your time. Hopefully today sort of gave you some different perspectives of how you can use forms and metadata inside Approve. Obviously, it's not comprehensive. There's lots of other scenarios that you could definitely do with these features. After this webinar, early next week, what we will do is we'll send you a link to the webinar recording. We'll send you a link to the keynote with some additional videos inside that keynote as well. And I'll also send out the Q&A for the questions that got asked during the webinar. Really important for us. Obviously, this is our first attempt at doing a webinar. none of us here approve our marketing people, as you're all fully aware. So we absolutely value your feedback. If this has been an absolute disaster, please do let us know. We're fine with constructive criticism. Or if there's anything you want to see in particular for future webinar content, or perhaps you would like to have a dedicated webinar which is to do with the administration side, where we show you how to actually implement these things, all of those things on the table. We're happy to do any of those things. So please don't be shy in coming forward with your ideas, and we'll definitely adopt them moving forward. So I think that's all that we got time for today. Sylvain, thanks for your presentation, much appreciated. And thank you everyone for joining. Really, really good to see you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.